this is Andrea from OurDayDream back again with another awesome guest. This week we have Joshua Whitehead. He is the lead vocalist of the band For All Generations. In this podcast, we spoke about his amazing testimony, overcoming trauma, and his work as a detective as well. This was a super insightful, awesome chat. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, here is Joshua. Hello.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. How are you?
Good. I would really love to know your story. How, because you really have an awesome presence today. Are you a cop? Is that what?
Yeah, so I'm a detective actually. That's my day job. So yeah, I was a cop for like a patrol officer on the road for 3 years, and then I got promoted to detective about 3.5, 4 years ago. So been doing that just a little bit longer than I was on the road. But yeah, I've been doing been at the sheriff's office for about 7 years.
That's incredible. And then you're also lead singer of a Christian band?
Yep.
Yeah.
For All Generations. So yeah, we started about December of 2019. We were like, hey, let's start a band, and then COVID hit. It was really something.
Yeah. God, I believe, definitely did mass changes in the churches since COVID, though.
Oh yeah, I agree.
To make the churches more open to, not being so stuck in their own ways. I believe that God was like definitely working to make it less religious and more open to fun and things like that. Do you believe that?
Yeah, and I mean, also what was cool in our area, we're from northern Indiana, so we had a lot of stuff where churches were coming together. We had something called Week of Worship that happened, and I got to help lead worship a couple nights out there. We did one in like 3 different cities that are all within about 40 minutes of each other, and basically it was like 7 or 8 churches that like got together and just worshiped outside, and they had different
That's
pastors,
amazing.
and they all just agreed to leave the doctrinal issues aside and just preach on Jesus and like God's love. And that's exactly what they did. No one really. And then we baptized a bunch of people in the back of a truck.
I love that.
And it was cool because it was like, hey, we're actually coming out of our buildings, because the church is us and what we're doing and how we're kind of being the hands and feet, and not just the building or the organization that we belong to. So
Right. And I love Christian music for that fact too, because it brings the different denominations together in one accord for praising Jesus. So it's
yeah,
like we all have this thing in common, and music's what brings us all together for that commonality.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's why concerts pack so many people out when it's Christian artists, because you don't just see one kind of church there. It's all kinds. And I
Right.
mean, and they're the conference, the Hillsong conference that happens, I think that proves that, where you have like millions of people there for all sorts of hearing all sorts of worship and music and different speakers and everything, just to agree on, hey, we may have some things we disagree on, because I mean, even the disciples and the apostles, they disagreed on stuff, but
True.
we all agreed on Jesus. So I
Right.
think I think the more we focus on that, the more the world will actually be changed too, because then we can actually, if we can learn to love one another within inside our own realm, then we can do things outside the realm. But so I think God used COVID in a mighty way, that he can kind of help us learn how to lay down our doctrinal issues,
Yeah.
come outside of the building, and also just some churches being more open to bringing new things in and trying different things and
Mhm.
technology. So just to get
Yeah.
the word.
I think the main reason that a lot of these churches are empty is because, I mean, I'm 40 years old here in a couple weeks, but and like I think a lot of people my age are looking at it as like this stuffy boring way of being like whenever we were little in Bible study, and not understanding that like churches have different personalities. Like there's rocker churches out there that they're playing like
Yep,
rock music before church. Like there's so many different personalities in the churches that evolve so much.
absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing is like, is you can't really define worship isn't just a song, it's a life, the
Yeah,
surrender. So
true.
it's not just the style of music or anything like that we tried to put boxes
Yeah,
on put God in a box for years, and I think we're finally starting to see like the fruition of everybody coming together and saying, no, we can't put God in a box, we can't
you're right.
call it this. So I agree, there's so many different styles of music and different styles of churches, and there's something out there for everybody in every
It's
walk of life.
exciting.
So yeah, it is absolutely is.
Yeah. That's been my belief system too, is that a lot of Christians hold God captive to the Bible rather than understanding God is so present in our lives. He didn't stop working after Revelations. Like he didn't only do this stuff in the Bible. He's still doing this stuff in our lives every day. And it's staying open to God, what are you doing today? Rather than God, you did all this amazing stuff in Joseph. It's like understanding like God's still doing this stuff today. And that's how I try to teach my 9-year-old. It's like, pray for these things and see if they don't come true. And God shows up for the kids like that because they have that faith.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes too, we're if we the more we put them in the box, the more that sometimes we don't see the the acts come through. Like I think as like in like a Western world, we're kind of I've talked to a lot of pastors about this, and it's like we're in a bubble, especially missionaries. They go overseas and you see people's legs grow out and arms grow out, and it's
I've
like,
seen, I've
you know,
seen.
it's like
Yeah,
these people just completely believe in, these are people that got to walk a mile just to get water every day. And we are so sheltered and
right.
so convenient for us that sometimes I think that, it's just, it's cool. But I think that we're blessed for sure. And as long as we're not taking that for granted, I think that's an amazing thing, an amazing blessing to have. Um, but yeah, I just love it when I hear about God coming out of the box and still working today. He absolutely is.
Yeah,
He's still doing miracles. He's still working in each one of us, showing each other love and just being there for one another. So I think that's
absolutely.
awesome to see it.
Amen. So yeah, can you tell me your testimony?
Yeah. So I mean, let's see, I was born on a Friday and I was in church that Sunday. So I literally was when I meant I was raised in the church. I was raised in the church. My parents were praise and worship leaders at the church I grew up in for several 20 something years. They were doing that. So I grew up around music, um, grew up singing, and um, I think I picked up instruments when I was about 9 or 10, and started playing guitar, and then just kind of developed interest in, when you're playing into bands, or I was in various bands in high school and junior high and stuff like that. You just kind of get curious about other instruments, and so I just kind of um, started exploring drums and keyboard and bass, and was never very good at the horns. So don't ask me to ever do that. But yeah, and then so I just kind of got really good at music. It just kind of something came naturally to me, um, and was really just it was did stuff in youth group and just on fire. And then I don't know what exactly happened, but right around let's say 15 or 16, I uh I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I smoked some marijuana, and I was drinking alcohol, um, and going to parties and doing stuff like that, and eventually just led me down this path where I just felt separated from God, and I was just running and just running and running, and um, I started a band in was still running for God, but running from God. But I started a band, a rock band, and we were playing in and out of bars, and nothing against that. We were all good people and decent dudes, but I was running from a calling that I had, and I still would always try to. Sorry, I still would always try to write uplifting songs and stuff like that, but I just always felt like I was not fulfilling what I was called to do. Um, and so I put music down for probably 2 or 3 years. This was after I met my wife and stuff. Even we met while I was running, and at the same time, it was like I was running, but yet we were going back to church, but I was still avoiding the hard stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I put music down for a couple of years. And then I had just become a police officer, and decided that we tried out this new church, and my wife and I was talking to the pastor about some issues that I was having, and just in a counseling session, and he found out that I played music and sang, and he's like, "Oh, well, why haven't you tried out for the worship team?" And I was like, "No," I was like, "Because this ego thing happens when all this bad stuff happens when I start doing music." I'm like, because I had portrayed I had linked somehow the running from God with music.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I was like, no, I have like this rock star thing that comes out of me, where I just want to be a rock star, and I want it to all eyes on me, and have all this selfishness stuff coming on, and ego, and all this stuff. And I was like, I can't do music. And it'd be different now. And I was like, no, man, I'm just telling you. He goes, no. He goes, you're a different person now. So he goes, it'll be okay. He goes, I'll see you Sunday. We're booking you to play on the worship team. And I'm like he didn't even hear me. So I'm guessing that I was good. But so I showed up and like played. I think I played guitar and sang some harmonies, and then eventually ended up leading worship. Over the next couple of months and years that I was there, and it was just it was crazy just how to see how God kind of just changed me. It was like, it was different. It just felt so different, because I wasn't doing it for me anymore. I was doing it for others. And not to say that I think every musician has some kind of struggle with ego, and having that like dream of being so I'm still an extrovert, so like the dream of like, and I think everybody can relate to that, though, not just musicians, of like being the center of attention is
Yeah.
fun and exciting. But knowing that you have to, in order to live the lyrics that you sing, you have to surrender that daily. And sometimes that's easier than others, and sometimes it's harder than others. So every day's got its different journeys and challenges. But that's kind of my story. It's been really, really different. The lyrics that I write now, and stuff, it all just flows out in a lot of different different way, out of a different place, I think. And I can be more real and vulnerable about things that I'm going through, things that I'm feeling, because I can do that with God. um, in the world, they tell you, don't tell people your weaknesses, don't tell
Yeah.
people. I saw a TikTok this morning. It was like, don't tell people your weaknesses, because they'll use them against you. And
Yeah.
don't
No.
don't tell people your plans, because, and I mean, there's some wisdom to telling certain people your plans, because they can plant bad seeds and stuff like that, and I get that. But they're saying like, don't tell people your plans, because they'll try to sabotage you and all this stuff, and don't be vulnerable. And I'm like, yeah, but that's what love does. I'm like, that's what love does. And it comes from a place of discord and distrust, where you, and I'm not saying be gullible and be irresponsible with certain things, kind of like a disclaimer. Certain people you probably shouldn't tell things to, and stuff like that. And I totally get stuff like that. But in general, when you're talking about music and talking to people, and if you want real relationships, then you have to be vulnerable.
Right.
You have to be honest. You have to tell people their weaknesses, or you don't have a real connection. You only have as deep of a connection as you're willing to go.
Right. And that's our testimony. That's how we're going to bring people to God, is through our testimony. And our testimony is not all like, you know, beautiful. Like our testimony, we have to go through hardships in order to see what God does in that.
Well, yeah,
So,
it's ongoing. I mean, um, we all have, quirks and hangups and sometimes addictions or things that we all have little things about ourselves that we don't like. Um, that God, I think, is continuously trying to reveal to us through the Holy Spirit, just saying, "Hey, that doesn't look like me. Let's cut that out of your life." And I think that's what the pruning process is. The Holy
yeah,
Spirit revealing things to you that doesn't look like God. And when you see that in your life, you go, yeah, you're right, God. That doesn't look like you. I need to get rid of that. And sometimes it's harder to let go of, and sometimes it's easier. And but that's a process that's ongoing, a daily surrender battle. And I don't think that that's something where it's like, hey, I had this one moment,
yeah,
and and cool for people that have, and nothing against them. I know some people that have, they had this one moment with God, and then everything, they felt like their whole life changed, and and they've never turned back or anything like that. But I think for a lot of us, when we hear stories like that, I get super inspired, but then I sometimes start to compare myself, which
yeah,
comparison's the thief of joy. And I think that you start comparing yourself and you go, man, why haven't I ever had one of those moments? Does that mean my relationship with God isn't real? And I mean, I've had that in myself where I look at people like Todd White or something like that, and you go, man, I wish I was like that, but I'm still struggling with, different things, um, and God's still revealing things to me, and you know, in a way that I'm constantly changing. I'm
yeah.
constantly being transformed,
I
and
feel like we should be. In
yeah,
the Bible, it says you can't get into the kingdom unless you are a child of God. And I feel like being a child is, constantly being available for God to do these things in your life. If you already have all the answers, you already know it all, you're already perfected, what's God going to do for you? You're not leaving any room to grow.
yeah, absolutely. And I speaking with my pastor about the same topic, and he was saying, it's we're perfect and we're being perfected at the
Yeah,
same. He goes,
right.
God looks at us and sees perfect, but
Mhm.
He's also revealing things to you in your life that aren't looking like Him, and that's not a condemning thing. That's a, hey, how deep do you want to go with this relationship? I'm not scared of seeing your whole heart. I'm not uh, scared of seeing your darkest spots. I just want to go there and light them up. And
Right.
so I think when you let God do that, we're constantly transforming. It's just like any relationship, as you grow and you get further into the relationship, that you continue to get deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that, how amazing it would be to look at myself through God's eyes.
Yeah,
Like, how incredible that would be. I could try to form it in my head, but I don't think that I'm ever going to get there to where I could actually see myself, because the world formed me too, like the
absolutely.
world programmed me as well. And so for me to actually see myself and identify with, like, who am I in God's eyes, that would be such a beautiful sight to see. Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And I think that's what we're all striving for, what we're all
Yeah.
trying to, and every now and then I think, during a really good song or really good sermon or just some alone time with God and a prayer or visions or whatever, you get a glimpse of that.
Yeah.
And it's when you get that glimpse, it's just like, wow, all these things I've done and none of it matters to you.
Yeah.
You don't care about all the things I've done. You only care about my heart. And
Right.
and even though sometimes my heart might be dirty or wicked or broken, that you only want my heart so you can heal it and restore it,
I love that. That's
not to
beautiful.
judge it, and that's,
Yeah.
I think that's something that we can do with God, that we can't always do with people. um
Yeah. I had worked in a rehab, and it's like, with God revealing all this corruption that I once thought was normal inside of me, and taught me all these bad things about myself that I had to then change, I was able to see that everybody's just striving for that connection with God, but they don't even know it. And so does that play a part in you being a detective too? Is just seeing they just need Jesus. And if only they could just grab a hold of it, this person could transform into a whole nother person, kind of like Saul and Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I was on the road, I remember praying for people and talking to people. Like even when I would take them to jail, people would be crying in my back seat,
Yeah.
just like I'm such a failure. I'm such
It's
because
so
on the
broken.
way to jail, a lot of times people start weighing their life, and I'd be like, I would just sit there and speak life into them and say, look, this is not who you are. This doesn't define you. This is a bad moment. You can either take this and just go, yep, this is who I am, and so I'll always be, and or you
Yeah.
can take a moment and say, I don't have to be my choices up to this point. I can change.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, I can start again, and I can make something better myself. This is not who I am, and I don't have to define my existence and who I am through this bad choice.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, as a detective, I don't get as much opportunity to. I mean, I have interaction with people in a different way, so I don't get as much opportunity to speak to people.
Minister. Yeah.
They're in different places. I think I do when I can, but working in the jail and working on the road, I think was the coolest spot where I could do some of that. I still do it whenever I get a chance. When I'm a detective too, or I mean, well, as a detective too, but yeah, it definitely has a role in, I think, in everything that I do. I mean, whether it's on the job or writing songs or up on the stage. I think it's just a ministry. It's supposed to be your life, and no, none of us are perfect. But I think it's supposed to be your life from the time you get up to the time you go to bed. It's
Yeah.
it's Jesus. So
Yeah.
I display that to everybody.
Right. I would go from them cussing me out, calling me all kinds of names.
Mm,
And I'd be like, but I genuinely care though. And then they'd be like, no, you don't. But a lot of people out there just believe that love is just a superficial understanding. And it's like, no, I can love you even if you're cussing me out and I have no idea who you are. Like I can still love you in that way. And so,
absolutely.
and and you'll see the transformation happen just in that understanding alone that maybe what they had always seen wasn't what the world looks like. Maybe there are genuinely good people out there. And, you know, totally believe that that's our place as Christianity is just to show that blind love, even if you're going to call me all these names.
Right.
Because next thing you know, like they're bonded to me because they're like, she just dealt with all that. She don't even know who I am. And she's still telling me she cares, but it's just all brokenness is what that is, I think.
Absolutely. I've
Yeah.
had uses of force with people where I've literally gotten to like a little bit of a scuffle with somebody, had to take them down and hold them, and still been able. But they're like, yeah, you probably hate me, and I'm like, no, man, I get it. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I'm not condoning your actions. I'm not going to condone your actions, but I don't dislike you. I don't hate
Yeah.
you. Um, I can do what's necessary to do my job and do so safely and make sure that you're not going to hurt yourself or me or others. But that doesn't mean that I have to have anger or hatred for you to do that. Um,
Right.
and I think
And that's a permanent change that you made in his life. And I know
yeah,
it because I see it happen, how it plays out just in like the form of the rehab where they were like stuck in there dealing with me for days to come. Like you see the transformation happen just through that. And you made a permanent change in his life. Yeah.
yeah. There's a couple of times where I actually had I just I had almost like a word of knowledge for somebody. It just like came on me, and they were sitting in the back of my car, and I just searched their car um, and just actually had to take them down to the ground and all that stuff. They tried to run from me on foot and all that, and it was like it kept coming to the forefront of my spirit and my head. Just kept hearing, "What are you running from?" And so I literally just turned around and asked him, I said, "Hey, what are you running from?" And he just, and then I noticed he had a cross necklace. and he just broke down and he started crying and he goes, "Me, man, I'm running from me." And he was like,
Yeah.
"I myself and I can't get out of these cycles." And I was just, and so I had this really cool opportunity to have, and literally captive audience. Um,
Yeah.
but they're literally, because he's being held in the back of my car. Um, but I literally had the opportunity to just really minister to him and really, I think, make an impact on his life, or at least I hope so. So,
Yeah. I imagine you did. So, tell me about the song "The End of Yourself."
and okay, yeah, that one just came out. So, yeah, that I just kind of wrote it in a few minutes, and it was really just it's just kind of like my story almost. It's just like all these things that I'd gone through. Um, and then I realized it was like, I kind of wrote the verses like all these things that I'd gone through, but then it like kind of goes, but like there's like a pre-chorus part and it just says, but then came you. And it was like, so now, and now I'm like standing here looking at the end of myself, but, and then realizing as a Christian, there's nothing better than that.
Yeah.
That's because that's the end of us is where God can begin. And so that's, I mean, that's literally what I say in the song. So, but,
Right.
and I just think that that's a, that's the biggest concept I was just trying to get across with that song was just like, um, thank God I'm finally free. I'm finally free from all the things that are holding me back. Now I may still have struggles with even the things that I had before I came to Christ, but and I may struggle with personality flaws and hiccups and hangups, but that doesn't mean I'm not free from them.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that important for us to learn. Um, like when I work with like celebrate recoveries and different kind of rehab stuff like that, I always tell people to focus on Jesus, not on your progress. I think when you focus on your progress, you're sin conscious, and when you focus on Jesus, you're righteousness conscious.
I needed that. Thank you.
So and that's literally the Bible says if you keep your eyes single, then your whole body is light. So it's like you focus on Jesus, and that should, because that's where your righteousness is.
I
And
love
so,
that.
and I need it too, sister, for sure. uh it's like you focus on Jesus because that's where your righteousness is. And the more we focus on where our progress is, the more we focus on the fact, then the enemy comes in and says, you're a failure.
You're lacking.
Going to be good enough. You're never going to do this right. You're never going to get free. I'm always going to have all these things start talking to you. But
Yeah.
when you look at, but it's just like when Peter started sinking, it was, look at Jesus. You keep your
Yeah.
eyes on Jesus and you can do it. So you have to just keep your eyes on Jesus, keep your focus there and not on what you're doing, just
Yeah.
on who you're chasing. And I think that's the biggest thing that I hope to get across to people, especially in that movement, because not to diss on that movement at all, but even the counting the days thing. Um, I've even tried it for little habits and hangups like biting my nails. Even when it comes
Yeah.
down to that small. Like the more I try to count days, the more I'm like, sometimes you almost give yourself, oh, I made it to 30 days, and I start by it's like, so, but even with bigger things, and it's like, oh man. So I mean, I think it's good to not that it's a bad thing to keep a tally on where you're at, but I think you can't put your focus so much there where you're like, oh man, I'm never going to even make it to that first mark. Like,
Yeah.
just don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
Just keep focusing on Jesus all the time. And I don't know. I think that would be my only advice for all that.
I imagine you said you wrote that in what, 5 minutes, did you say?
Yeah, I think I wrote the whole song, like all the lyrics in like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It just kind of came. Some of them I try really hard with. Some of them just come. We've got 4 new ones coming out this year. We're going to be releasing a song every 8 weeks. So it should be pretty cool. I think our new one's in March. Trying to remember it. March something. March 3rd is our next one. And this whole project is like a 4-song project. It's called Second Life. And the guitar player in the band, Matt, and I wrote it out of, we both were victims of child sexual abuse. So we both kind of wrote it out of that place of trying to find healing for the abusers, and trying to find forgiveness for us being abused, and how it was the darkest place. It was the darkest place in our lives. And I looked at him and told him, I said, I'm ready to talk about this. Are you? Because we talked to each other about it. And I said, and he said, yeah. He said, let's do it. So he wrote a verse and I wrote a verse, and then we wrote the chorus kind of together, and it's just called Second Life. And that one comes out in July or June, I think. But it literally just talks about, like, you're crying out for a second chance, and maybe a better life or a brand new life. And then it just says that you gave me a second life, because that's exactly what we get with Jesus, is a second chance and a second life, a chance to start over and forgive and leave stuff like that behind. And that's pretty kind of much what the whole project's about. And it's about, our sin cycles and things that we're dealing with. One of our songs on there is called Process. And the words literally are, I'm in the process, I'm in the promise, I'm keeping my eyes fixed on you instead of my progress. And so, and I mean, that just comes out of a place of where I was feeling like I was right in the spot we were just talking about, where it was just like, you almost, man, I'm like, oh man, I'm not making very good progress with this habit. Then you literally just I started feeling this overwhelming sense of gloom of, I'm never going to be good enough. And so I kind of wrote the verses out of that. It's just really this just like dark spot, but then this remembrance in the back of mind that says, no, this is not where I have to stay. Like, yeah, I may have slipped up, but I have the power to get back up. Sin has no power over me. That doesn't mean that I'll never sin, but that means that it doesn't have the power to keep me down. And so I have the power to get back up and keep running, because that's what God called us to do, and freed us to do, and paid for us to be able to do.
As being a person that's been through a lot of trauma in your past, do you see that? I mean, I see, as somebody that's been through a lot of trauma in my past, and then being reborn again through Jesus, and Jesus then giving me that availability to use that trauma now for purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
But do you see that a lot of society and the depression and anxiety that exists is them tacking that past on to who that they are?
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think we're all trying to get over our trauma and get over our past, because I think everybody has trauma in the past. I recently I don't know if I listened to all sorts of podcasts, and I was watching this thing. It was the Joe Rogan with Jordan Peterson on it, and he was and I'm not saying all of my opinions align with those two guys, but it's just a very interesting point that he brought up about looking at the cross and comparing it with the bronze snake in the desert. And he was saying that and this was Jordan Peterson saying, this was his opinion, saying that when you looked at the snake, it was literally like you were looking at what you're most afraid of and staring into the abyss. And he was basically like, if you stare long enough into the abyss and look at this thing that you're afraid of, this ugliness and this hatred, and even at the cross, when you look at it, you see yourself in the cross, and you see this traumatic past and this horrible things, and all the horror and the depth and the anger and the malice and the betrayal and all this stuff that you see yourself in yourself when you look at the cross. But when you look at it long enough, you see a God that was willing to go there for you. And I think that the biggest part about getting over trauma is being willing to face it.
Yeah.
You have to be able to look at what you're most afraid of. And I'm still in the process of doing that myself. I think the willingness to be able to do it is when you start healing.
Right. Yeah. People will be like, well, why is all this bad things happen if there's a God? And I'm like, because we're not in heaven yet. But what God does do is turns that around for good. So like the same trauma that I've went through, I can now use that as my purpose, and
Oh,
people can thank
absolutely.
me because I done went through that, because now I'm helping them out through theirs. And so
Yeah.
it's that process that it's like, yeah, we're in an imperfect world, but
Yeah.
I can use that.
When I think God has to allow bad things to happen in order to have real love, in
Yeah.
order to have real choice. I talk about this stuff all the time. So if you want to have the ability of a choice, then you have to be able to choose evil or good. And
Yeah.
it's not that God couldn't stop things, but it's that he has to let you choose. Um, so I think that but I think he has the ability to turn things around, that the devil, like it says, what the enemy intended for bad, God turned it towards
Yeah.
good. So I agree with you 100%. I think that when you go through something traumatic and you're willing to face it, and you start the journey of healing, and then you start openly sharing that with others and start pointing them towards Jesus and saying, look, God helped me walk through this, and
Yeah.
look at the I was most scared of, and I didn't have to be afraid because he was going through
Hmm.
it. And now I'm able to share this story with you, and it inspires them to do the same thing.
And then they say, thank you for this
Yes.
trauma.
Yeah. And
It's
then
like,
they tell somebody, and they tell somebody, and it's eventually spreading that healing and that hope and that light. And I think that's all why we do. That's why we do what we do. I mean, that's why we're called to love one another in the first place. So
right. Faith in You. Tell me about the song Faith in You.
um that one, man, some of these are so funny. That one's been our biggest success so far. I think it got like over 20,000 streams or something on it. And
It's fun to listen to.
that was our first music video. That one was kind of the same place as dealing with some addiction to pornography. Actually, was I was struggling with that for quite some time, and I was literally the first part of the words, nail it out, is just wrestling with the feeling that I'll always be this way, and knowing that that's not true, but it still feels the same, like I'll never change. And I was writing I think I kind of did the same thing, like I did in the other one. I wrote the verses out of this place, and then I was sitting in bed. I was laying in bed one night, and I literally just, like, I woke up and went out because I had this melody in my head, and I went out in the kitchen and just, you're partying the waters and tearing down walls. And I literally just it just came out. I was just like, okay, well, thanks God, because like, even the so things in my way don't affect me at all. And it was just like this overwhelming feeling of, like, I have victory over everything in Christ. It's just whether or not I'm wanting to look at that or not. So yeah, I think I hope that helps somebody. And it's a fun song. I enjoyed playing it.
Yeah,
We
it
did
is.
a video, so that was fun, because we went out on, there was this island, out in the like a little island out in the middle of the river, and so we had to go in there in a boat, but we had the camera crew and the band and all the camera stuff and all the instruments, and we only had one little boat that fit like 6 people, so we had to, like, and we had 2 locations we were filming in on the river, so they like dropped the band off, and then with all the equipment, and then they had to go back and get the camera crew and come back. And then the same thing for the other location. So we're literally just like sitting there for like 40 minutes waiting on the crew to get there. And it was a fun experience, but it literally took a long time. But it was cool. And the other cool thing about that song, kind of some behind the stuff, it's actually behind me, is the artwork for the song. It's painted by a lady, Valerie Jones. She's a local artist here. And this is when that song got real for me. So this is not, I haven't even really shared a whole lot of this publicly before, but I said, Valerie, I said, I'm so, she paints hundreds of stuff, and for some reason this one just stuck out to me. And I said, what do you call this? And she said, I called it, oh man, I forget now. I think it was called Focus. or something along the lines like that. I'm gonna have to remember, but I said, well, how did you paint it? And she said that she was praying and worshiping, and she literally, she said, I closed my eyes and I was trying to imagine what Jesus would look like. And she said, and then I just started painting. And she said, and this is what came out. And it's kind of like an abstract piece, so it's not like a portrait of Jesus or anything, but she was like, this is what came out. So I thought that was an awesome story.
Yeah.
And that's part one. Part two of that is when I was like, I called my friend Jesse and his wife Justice, because Jesse has an awesome testimony, and I'd have to let you tell him that. It's a long testimony of basically just kind of a similar thing of running from God and drugs and alcohol and stuff like that, and depression, and just God calling him out of all of that, and completely.
We'll have to set something up.
Yeah. No, oh man, he's such a good dude. Just completely changed. And what was cool is the first time I met him, he was still old Jesse. And he came to the Christian band, we actually played at a bar one time. And he was there. He was one of the band members' friends. He's our drummer's friend, and grew up in the church and stuff. And he came out to support us and all that. And then like started coming to church and then it was like all of a sudden he come to church and he was just radically changed, just like all this, like just like, wow, dude. And so it was just a really cool testimony. And then it was like literally like, I think it was maybe 6 months to a year later after he'd been changed and just gave his life to Christ. He went to this revival and stuff, and then he met this girl, I think at a revival. I think that's where they met. And they went out on a date, and now they're married, going to have their first baby here soon.
That's awesome.
And so it's really cool. And they're both just radically in love with Jesus. And they're just such a cool couple. And the drummer and I actually got to be part of their wedding party. And so like when they asked, when we were like, hey, what's the storyline for the video going to be? It was, well, how about Jesse's testimony? And we kind of end the song with like them getting married, just showing how much God can change you. Well, I'm asking Jesse I said, hey man, you never actually told me like the moment you gave your life to Christ. And so you actually see it in the video. It's kind of cool. We kind of tried to reenact it, but he said he was at a band practice and he just started freaking out. He broke bottles. He did all sorts of stuff. He just started freaking out and he started like convulsing and shaking. And he was literally just saying, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And he said, I didn't know what was wrong with me. He goes, I knew my mom would understand. He goes, so I left band practice and got in my car and drove straight to my mom's house. He goes, and I sat at the table and I talked to her. And he said his mom had a Bible laying on this recliner. And he goes, what am I supposed to do now? And she said, why don't you look over there and just try to imagine that Jesus is sitting in that chair. And he said he did. He went over to the chair and he said, I met Jesus right there at that chair.
I love that.
He fell down to his knees and she put a prayer shawl over him and just prayed with him, and he gave his life to God. So when he was telling me that, I just started crying, and he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, no, I said, it's just crazy because I was like, you're sitting there telling me this, that you were imagining what Jesus looked like standing in front of you. I said, and that's exactly what Valerie was doing when she painted the artwork for it. And it just kind of like all came together. Yeah. It's a really cool moment. So literally when we did the video, we put the artwork above the chair. We actually filmed it in his mom's house, that scene, and
that's
put
awesome.
The artwork, the piece of art right above the chair. So it's kind of a neat little story there, but
yeah. So what's next?
Like I was kind of already telling you, we got this Second Life project. We've got 4 songs. One of them's called Something Else. That's the last one we're going to release. I think it's in August. And then we've got Second Life, and then Process. And the first song we're going to release is Changed. And these kind of are all songs just about like being free from all that stuff, and just kind of growing. And I think with these next four, we grew spiritually, we grew as musicians, and we worked really hard with our producer to we still kind of had a little bit of a rockier edge, which is fine, but we were really trying to hit that more like mainstream contemporary Christian sound. And so we worked really hard to get these more in that genre, in the niche, and just try to get better songs. So we did some, like, we took the ideas and basically like, hey, we're going to speed this part up, or hey, we're going to slow this one down, or we're going to change this little chord progression to go like this instead of like this, and you're going to sing it just a little bit differently. And he really, our producer, Jake Rye, really just really spoke life into these songs, and really just helped us shape and mold them like we never had before. And he's who we've worked with the whole time, but we did it a little bit different way this time, and it was just it worked out. I think you're going to see a drastic difference when you listen to the first 6 songs we released versus these next 4. I think you're gonna hear it, like,
Yeah.
like, wow, these guys grew a lot in their musicianship and in their songwriting. And I was a lot more vulnerable. That was my biggest thing, and I continue to make it my biggest thing when I'm writing new stuff, now working on new ideas and stuff, is just being authentic. And that's what I pray every time, just like, God, help me to be authentic and vulnerable.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way that I can reach, or kind of bridge that gap to where I can actually make an impact on someone else's life and hopefully lead them to Christ, is by being vulnerable with where I'm at and where I've been, and where I'm going.
Yeah.
And literally leading them in the song to Jesus. So that's
Such a good word.
That's my goal.
Yeah, it's such a good word. And a lot of Christians really need to get real with their walk so that it's more believable to the non-believers.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what I even, because I mean, I'm not perfect. None of us are. And I struggle with my walk, but that's where I don't want to be fake about my struggle.
Yeah.
I don't want to say a bunch of cookie cutter Christian lyrics so it can sound like I have a better song lyrically. I want to be honest with where I'm at spiritually, because I think other people might be there too.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, I want to grow, and I've never changed that my faith's in God, and that he's the reason that I'm able to go through this, and he's the reason I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm singing, I'm writing. It's all because of him. And but I have to be real with where I'm at currently, and even in my struggles. And it's okay to struggle. We're free to struggle, as 10,000 at the time.
Absolutely.
We're free, so we're able to struggle and get all of this out, so that we can have that full life in Christ.
Right. Where does everybody find you? Do you have a website?
We don't have a website anymore. We weren't getting a whole lot of traffic, so we took it down for the time being. We'll probably get it back again later. But right now we're on Facebook and Instagram under For All Generations Music, and that's just the number 4, and then All Generations Music. And then we're just under just For All Generations on TikTok and YouTube. I think we're under For All Generations Music and YouTube as well. And then we're on Spotify and all the streaming services. But
thank you so much for joining me. And
thank you.
I thank you for your kingdom work and your heart and everything you're doing in the world.
Yeah, well, you as well. It was very nice chatting with you and getting to know you.
All right. Well, blessings to you.
Hey, you too. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You're welcome. You too. Bye. If you like this podcast, please hit subscribe, because we have an awesome guest coming up every week, and I don't want you to miss out. God bless. See you next time. Bye.